So I've got this squared out, and I've got it about drawn out as about as long as I want. So now I'm going to make it round into a round cross section, and then I'm going to put a last little taper on the very end to make it look pretty, and then I'll start bending it over. But since I've been just in that short period of time of talking, I've already lost my heat. So to further answer one of the early questions about equipment and what it takes to get started with something like this. So I said that, you could use a cast iron brake drum for solid fuel, but I didn't talk about propane. Propane is a lot cheaper and a lot easier to get a hold of. I have a 100-pound tank that I drive 2 miles down the road to Ace Hardware and get it refilled. And so to build a propane forge, if you want to go that route, you can use all different kinds of materials. I've seen people use ammo cans, and they'll put what's called refractory cement, which is a specific kind of heat tolerant cement, and you just line the inside of the ammo can. You have a little door at the front, little door at the back, with a small burner, and even almost like a weed burner, or like one of those grass burners. I've actually seen people use just those handheld like shop torches, and as long as you have good insulation, and even that will get you to where you can make small knives and whatnot. What I've used in the past for, I see Aaron saying it made a forge out of fire bricks and angle iron, and that's perfectly that's perfectly legit, and it's really cheap, really easy, and that'll get you started really quick. You can buy a box of fire bricks, specifically fire bricks. You can buy a box of those from Tractor Supply, depending on your area. People who have wood burning stoves, so like the northern regions, a fire brick and stuff like that's going to be a lot more accessible. I use KO wool. It's a type of ceramic fibrous wool, and then I line that wool with a refractory. And again, you can make it as complicated as you want or as simple as you want. The simplest route is to go with the fire bricks and the angle iron. You just stack the fire bricks in such a way to really kind of support themselves, and then the angle iron kind of keeps it all together, keeps it from falling apart. I did that when I first got this work area going. And you can use a really easy way to go if you wanted to use the KO wool and the refractory, is you get a portable air tank. You can find them on Facebook Market, Craigslist, and offer up all those different classifieds, used classifieds apps and stuff. And you can, this takes a little more fabricating, and a little bit more knowledge of what you're doing. But the KO wool is a much better insulator than just regular fire brick. Of course, you can, instead of doing like one layer of fire brick in a frame, you can do 2 layers or 3 layers of fire brick if you just want to keep it simple, but increase your insulation factor. Or you could go with the KO wool route. Now, the KO wool, it's ceramic fibers, and it's kind of like fiberglass. So when you're working with it, you definitely don't want to breathe in those fibers, because once you breathe them in, they're not coming back out. So you want to wear a respirator. Even like a dust mask isn't really good enough. So you want to be wearing a respirator with the canisters, and wear gloves. But you can use that to line the inside of the portable air tank, and then you seal that KO wool. You seal that KO wool with refractory, and that's very, very important, because those the fibers of the KO wool will come off as the forge is running, and so that's another way of inhaling those fibers. So you always want to seal your KO wool with the refractory, and that's what I've done here with this one, and it does really well with insulating. The insulation factor is pretty darn decent. I've got 2 inches of KO wool with about 1/2 inch of refractory on the inside, and I've got materials to make 2 more forges. So that way I've got a forge for every anvil for whenever I'm doing classes and stuff like that. So
Robert Left Hand has shared a Mr. Volcano forge that's on Amazon for $88.
Oh, yeah.
The starter forge. Thank you, Robert, for posting the link on Google. That's a big help. Thank you, Robert.
Yep. There's all different kinds of links. You can just type in. There's a lot of eBay stores that have a lot of really good beginner forges and stuff like that. So just type in propane blacksmith forge and Amazon or eBay. eBay tends to be smaller companies, and so those forges are typically built by people who are blacksmiths. In my experience, some of the smaller eBay stores have a little bit better quality. You might pay a little bit more, but as with all things, you get what you pay for. So, but the Amazon link, I've seen a lot of people use that one. I know the one that's in that link. I've seen a lot of people use that one, and it works just as well as all the others. So.
Lachlan says he bought the Devil Forge from eBay and it's awesome.
What I did with this piece, this is going to be the backside of the hinge, which is going to be this piece. So this drawn out portion here was more or less centered. So what I did is I turned it up on its edge here. And I was hitting in a very specific place right here, and which actually made this thin portion shift all the way down to one side. So now it's off center. I got to work it a little bit more. I'm going to clean up this transition. Just touch hot steel. I'm going to clean up this transition right here, make that little prettier. And I'm going to draw it out just a tiny bit and make it round. And then I'm going to close the loop. Okay, so with this piece, again, I'm going to clean up this transition here on both sides, get that a little bit prettier. I already started making this cross section round. One joke that's pretty prevalent in all of blacksmithing is that 85% of all blacksmithing is taking square things and making them round, and making round things and making them square, because that's just usually how it happens. And this is a perfect example. I had two pieces of square, of 3/4 inch square, and then I made this part rectangle, and then I made this part round. And to get the last little bit drawn out like I want it, I'm going to have to take it back to square, draw it out to a nice fine point, and then I'm going to have to round it out again. So, and that's just doing techniques like that is just the most economical way of, economics of, energy as far as swinging the hammer, and economical as far as energy being put into the piece, as far as, fire and stuff like that. There's different hammer techniques that you can use that are a little advanced, but by doing these techniques right, you actually add heat into the metal with each hammer blow. And that's a lot easier to see if I had control over the light. If it was real nice and dim, then I could actually show you some of these techniques. And by adding heat into the workpiece, it allows you to work allows you to work for longer. So it's just a more efficient way of smithing. So, but again, that's kind of an advanced form of hammer techniques, and by no means something that should be anyone be perfect at it right away. I still have some trouble, with my hammer techniques, even after 10 years of doing it.
A future class.
So to make taking a square cross section round, so you have four sides, obviously because it's square, and then the best way to go is to knock off the corners like this. By knocking off the corners, you make essentially an octagon cross section, and then from there, depending on how big your cross section is, sometimes you can go straight to rounding off the corners, or you go to a 16-sided shape or a 16-sided cross section. And that's just basically knocking the corners off again. I usually, a cross section like this, I usually go from square to octagon. And it's usually pretty safe to go straight to knocking off all the corners and going to a round cross section. This wind is really killing me. You can really see how fast. You really see how fast this these pieces cool off.
We can go as long as you like. If you're feeling tired, we could wrap it up. It's up to you.
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. I usually forge for at least 6 hours at a time, so I'm good. right now, all I'm doing is just planishing out all the big hammer marks.
We have
Sorry,
a
I saw.
we have a question.
Okay.
When a piece is finally shaped and completed, where does one put it to cool and for how long?
Where does one put it to cool?
And for how long?
Well, I mean, you could just see with something like this, you're not really worried about, you don't have to worry about heat treating or putting it under any kind of additional stresses. So you really could just, what I typically do is when I'm done is that I'll throw the work pieces into the forge and turn the forge off and let it cool off slowly that way. But I mean, you don't even really have to do that, especially for something like this. So this isn't, it's not going to have a whole lot of stress on it or anything like that. So it's pretty safe to just like throw it on the ground or, you know, just whatever. Pretty close now. A few more eights. I have here is a set of scrolling tongs, and they're basically kind of like needle nose pliers, but the bit here is just round, and that allows me to grab the very end of pieces that I want to put a nice even. It's called a scroll, and it's just a really artistic kind of swirly bit on the very end. I can use that. I can use these tongs and just curl it real easy over the rounded bits. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to curl it down like that. Edge like that. I'm going to take it again. Kind of like that. I ran out of heat. Get this hot again so I can finish closing that up. Same thing with this one. This one's a little bit thicker, so it might be a little more difficult. I'm going to turn that over like that. Now I'll actually use the end. Oh, can't see it. Crap. Ran out of heat again. So next heat, I'm going to keep closing that up. Over just a little bit so you can see the horn of the animal. That's where I'm going to be doing most of my work.
Count Valbrandr,
Yes, sir.
my lady is asking a question. Have you ever made a sword?
I have. I made a lang sax for my lady wife, Duchess Cherish. And a Langsax is basically a single-edged short sword, Viking era short sword. And I'm currently working on a basically kind of like an early period arming sword for SCA steel fighting. All right, so this is pretty much done. It's got a slight bend here in this flat section to accommodate for the curved top of the rowing bench or chest or whatever you want to call it. You got this little loop here that will then I'm going to close that loop up a little bit, just so it'll look a little bit neater when the hinges are together. So, but I correct myself, I'm almost done with this. Here at the very end, it can be quite frustrating because you're working with a very thin cross section of steel, and you get so close and it's so close to finishing, but with your thin cross section of steel, it just wants to cool off so fast. You're just trying to get the last few hammer blows in before it cools off, so you can finish the darn thing. Because sometimes the steel doesn't quite want to cooperate. So this is looking really, really good. Just trying to even out the curve here, and then I'm not going to close it up all the way. That's going to be my very last heat. I'm going to close it up. I'm going to put the other side of the hinge on it, and then I'm going to close this ring. And then from there, I'm going to hit it with a wire brush and get all this big, nasty scale off.
Cal Valbrandr, we have a question.
Okay, let me throw this in the forge real quick. Okay, go ahead.
Do you make your own tongs or do you purchase them?
I have tried many times to make my own tongs, and it's all been utter failures. They can be quite technical. I know they look fairly simple, but there's a lot of aspects, a lot of little details that have to be just right. And the mark of a good smith or a good craftsman in general is not necessarily to make one thing once, but to make two things the exact same way. And so with tongs, you have to make, so you got this piece here, you have to make another one exactly the same. And that can actually be quite difficult sometimes. And that's, I can always make one side quite nice, but I can't always make the other side of the tong, the other piece of the tong, just like the first one. So
sounds like a good art side project.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's definitely more rudimentary and simpler forms of tongs than these. Even these are quite plain. But referencing the Mastemir find again, there are really simple tongs that do the same job as something like this. So it's possible, especially with the simpler designs. I just haven't tried them yet. I usually try to go for modern tongs, modern style tongs, but I guess that's probably where I'm failing at. Instead of biting off more than I can chew like I usually do. Perhaps I should go with a simpler design and then work my way up from there. Make
Is
10
it-
tongs of the simpler design and then try to graduate up.
I imagine the ability to craft your own tools, that's like another level of skill.
Oh, absolutely. I've made a few hammers for specific jobs. I've even helped my lady wife, Duchess Cherish, make a requisite hammer modeled after a small hammer found in the Mastermere chest, and that was one of her art side projects. I made a hammer again modeled after the Mastermere find, and I've made that out of wrought iron, which is exactly the kind of material that they used. So, and that was for a novice entry. I still have the hammer, and I still need to finish it. I plan to weld a steel face onto it, because of course the iron is going to be very soft and it won't last very long, especially if I'm hammering on steel. Even though that the steel is red hot and it's more malleable, it's still going to be quite tough on an iron hammer. So my plan is to forge weld a steel face onto my Viking style hammer or my Norse style hammer. That way I could use it at events and just have a more period presence whenever I'm at events and doing demonstrations and classes and stuff in person. Right. So that's more of the shape that I was looking for. You can see how that very tail is kind of turned up a little bit more, and that's a much smaller hole. While I still have a little bit of heat in it, go. All right, so this piece, more or less done. I like the shape of this eye a lot better than what it was. So now I'm going to get the other piece, run the eyes through one another, and I'm going to close the eye on the other piece. And from here, I can even put these pieces back in the forge and continue to brush them and try to get the big gnarly scale off and, refine the shape just a little bit more. And, you can really just kind of focus on the details until oblivion, really. But at the end of the day, as long as they work properly, then there's no need to try to, pursue perfection. That's one thing that I tell a lot of people who are just trying to get into a craft. You can, if you're still trying to learn skills and, or just trying to re-solidify old skills, or, practice older skills. You can chase perfection, but because we're human, we'll never find it. We'll never get to it. But sometimes you just need to leave well enough alone. And so, there's obviously there's a few things that I can do a little bit different to this. I could take them back apart and say, like with this, you see this part is a nice fine. So like this is a nice fine even scroll, and the taper is really nice. And then you got this other piece where that taper is a little bit thicker, and like I said, I could take it apart and I could fiddle with it even more, or I could just leave it like it is and let it work like it's supposed to. Either way, it's going to work. It's going to be a good hinge. As a matter of fact, this part that I'm holding would be a better hinge than the other part, because this has more mass. It's going to be stronger. So
Robert's asking, what about punching the mounting holes?
Oh yeah, I could totally do that. I've got the punch right over here. Yeah, we can totally do that. If people are still willing to watch, totally do that.
We still have a captive audience of 5 people.
Oh, okay, that works. So just to kind of give you a rough illustration. So this part, okay, you guys can see that. So this part will go on the back side of the trunk, or rowing bench, or whatever you call it. This will go on the top, and this just hinges up like that. As this stays in place, this will hinge up like that. And with another set of hinges over here, it actually works quite nicely. Yeah, I'll go ahead and punch the holes. So all I'm using right now is this is just a camera. This is just a spring punch. It's a modern spring punch. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball the holes where I want them. This allows me to find where I want to punch the holes when it's red hot. Obviously, there's no point trying to put a permanent marker or even, like a soapstone line, because most often that will just burn right off, especially the permanent marker. Right there. Right there, looks good. All right, so back in the pot. since those pieces got a little cold, we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for them to warm back up. They've got a pretty thin cross section right now, so it shouldn't take too long for them to warm up.
What are some other suggestions you have for beginning smiths to maybe look at resources online or find, or perhaps other resources that they could look into?
I would say YouTube. YouTube is the greatest and largest well of knowledge that's on the internet right now. There's a lot of smiths that have started making instructional videos and stuff like that, and a lot of them, you know, one guy that I follow pretty religiously is Alec Steele. It's kind of funny, his last name is Steele, but it's AlecSteele. He's a British kid that started when he was like 15, 16 years old. He came to America and did some blacksmithing classes with Brian Brazil, who is one of the greats here in America. And then he took that knowledge back to Britain, and he started from working in a shipping container and some industrial lot to, he upgraded to a quite nice shop, and then he upgraded to an even better shop, and then he moved to America, to Montana, and he's got a quite nice shop there, and blah 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 blah. But with him, you really get to see his growth and his skills, and just growth overall as a metal worker, because he started when he was 16, and I think that's pretty much when he started making videos on YouTube. And there's even Brian Brazil, one of the greats, he has a lot of instructional videos on YouTube, and pretty much everyone in the blacksmithing community doesn't try to bullcrap you. They all try to put out good, valid information for people who are trying to learn, because ultimately, I mean, this is a dying art. There's no need for blacksmiths anymore, because you can always, you can go to the store and buy a knife that was cut out by a CNC machine and, was ground to shape by some guy who's just really, really good with a grinder or something like that. So there's no need for it. It's very much a very niche industry. And so a lot of smiths in the community are just want to pass on their knowledge and help beginners along, to help keep this craft alive as much as possible. So I'd say go to YouTube. There's forge building instructional videos. There's introductory skills videos, and just you name it, anything that you can think of, YouTube will have it. And there'll be someone who's genuinely trying to help the community grow. So punch these holes. Let's see. All right. So you can see them there. So I punched probably about 80 to 90% through the workpiece. So now I'm going to turn it over. You can actually see the indentions you can see the indentions on where it almost came through. So I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to punch through the other side, and that should shear that tiny little disc that I made with the punch. It should shear that right out, and I'll have a hole.
Robert says that he likes to watch Black Bear Forge and Christ Centered Ironworks on YouTube, and you can subscribe to their channels.
Yeah, I've watched both of those guys. Those guys are really cool. Yeah, like I said, I mean, you're pretty much anyone who's willing to go through the time and effort to make videos is going to be genuinely wanting to keep the craft alive. You might run into some buttholes like in person, you know, at conventions and stuff, but even then, like on the grand scheme of things, as a whole, you know, they're just really enthusiastic about their craft, and they're super excited about people who are also, you know, who are also willing to learn this craft. So you're not going to get guys that are going to want to try to full craft you, or, you know, just try to, you know, spout out whatever to try to mislead you. And everyone that I've come in contact with in the community has just been really cool people. It's nice to see that kind of, that kind of unity. You know, because a lot of times, and especially, you know, today's day and age, there's a lot of division, you know, for whatever reason. But you know, and that's, you know, I find that's true with, you know, like anyone who has a craft. You know, there's my wife and I, we've done repoussé classes. We flew out to Arizona to do a repoussé class, and just everyone there was like super enthusiastic that there are people willing to learn this very specific craft to make beautiful things. And, you know, woodworking, you know, it just someone who we have a Laurel who makes barrels, you know, and he'll go from, you know, just flat planks, and he'll make barrels. And he's a Laurel in our kingdom in Chimeras. And he's just, you know, I've expressed my interest in doing like some collaborative work with him. And, you know, he makes the wood, all the wood for the barrels, and I make the steel bands to hold it all together, stuff like that. So and he's been super enthusiastic about that. You know, anyone who has a craft is usually really excited when they see someone willing to learn. Sure you guys can see what I'm about to do. So take this. This is gonna be interesting. That's one hole. So obviously I'm not going to be able to do it over this virtual hole. So I'll just have to do it over the face thing and try to knock out the puck. just like that. Now you got 2 holes, 1, 2, and you can take the time now. You still have a little bit of heat. Bend back in it. So now you got 2 holes with the bend. Now I'm going to punch the holes on the other side. So that's called a puck. And that's what I punched out with that drift punch. So I punch it on one side to make the cross section real thin. You can kind of see how thin that is. And then you go back to the other side. You go back to the opposite side, and then you punch it once and sometimes twice, and that will shear that thin wall and remove that bit of steel. It's not just from a fine point and just spreading out the metal. You're actually removing a small chunk of it.
Robert says he got lucky and got to see Hugo Serrano doing repause at the last time we got to do forging.
Yeah. Hugo Serrano, he's one of the greatest armors and repoussé artists, and definitely in North America. Probably he's well within the top 10 in the world. Which is a funny story about Hugo is that my wife, her best friend, Carolina, or her SCN name is Tamina. Hugo started in her garage in Orlando many years ago, and he wanted a little bit of shop space for him to get started, and they had a garage, and so they were already friends, and she let him do armoring and repoussé in her garage, and that's where he started. And now he's done just really, really incredible work, world-class work in metal. And he's done a lot of really awesome reproductions, and he's made a lot of armor for movie studios. And he's definitely taken his art form to, and dialed it to 11, and he's managed to make quite a bit of money off of it, I imagine. But my wife and her best friend knew him on a personal level once upon a time. When my wife and I went to Arizona, we went and studied under Douglas Pryor for, I believe it was 3 days. And Douglas, he's up there too. Like he's gone to Thailand, I believe, and studied under some of the artists there that will do huge, like 4 foot by 4 foot silver panels for the temples there. And he's gone to Europe many times to study the Roman era repoussé, and some of his works are just absolutely incredible. And we had the privilege to get into one of his classrooms, and we did some stuff with him. And just in those 3 days, I learned a lot from him, and I actually quite enjoy his philosophy about the metalworking and trying to recreate something that was done 2,000 years ago. Especially he he likes the Roman era, repoussé, you know, with the cups and chalices and vases and bowls and all that, and even some of their armor. And he was a good teacher, and that was a lot of fun. So there's a tiny, tiny sliver of steel somewhere on this last hole. Just holding on for dear life. I can't quite knock the puck out. I should be able to do it here. Still holding on. There you go. You can see it there. Still holding on somewhere. Probably comes down to me not lining up the punch just right. There we go. Got 2 holes there. All right, so there you have it. So all I did here, I had a tank of water over there, and I dumped it in. That way I can get these. With mild steel like these are, it's not that important. You don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about these being brittle or anything like that. Here, let me adjust the camera a little bit better. You don't have to worry about these being brittle after being dunked in water because this is just mild steel, very soft steel. So, but that's basically it. Again, I can go back to the forge and try to clean these up and start trying to chase perfection. But there you have it. So you got this flat piece goes on the back side of the chest or the rowing bench, whatever you call it. This goes on the top and it just kind of hinges up like that.
So did that come from 2 ingots?
Yes.
Awesome. Robert says that he's involved with the United League of Armorers.
Yep, I'm part of that group.
What is that?
That is a group on Facebook that geared more towards armor than blacksmithing like this. But again, that's that group is just this huge well of knowledge, of people working in a craft that working, in a dying craft. So that's always, I refer to those guys because they'll post, new research finds or, they'll post their research or new archaeological finds. And they just post about their experiences and, their current projects that they're working on. And so if you want to get into armor, it's still metal, it's still, it's still a medium that I love to work with. I've made most of my armor that I use in the SCA. I've always have. So, just metal and all forms is just a real joy to work with.
Ellen Roy says, thank you for presenting this class. This was a good intro watching somebody work before I go to the spring hammer in cold.
Ooh, nice. Right on.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It took you 3 hours to finish your hinges.
Went a little over schedule.
Oh, no, it was perfect. It was perfect. We needed time to talk to cool so that the metal could heat up. We had good opportunity to teach and talk about technique while the metal was heating up, and we had a chance to see you get the job done. It was a delight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting, and this was a lot of fun as well. And when I go through classes and teaching and stuff, it always helps. It helps me be a better smith, and it helps me be a better teacher because this something like this wasn't very hard, and so it helps me kind of re-solidify the foundation of the basic techniques that it takes to make something like this. So and trying to put my thoughts into words sometimes isn't as easy as I would like it. So having more opportunity to try to explain exactly what I'm doing step by step and what the metal is doing as I'm working it, giving me the opportunity to explain that more and more really helps me become a better teacher. So this is quite fun for me as well, and I would be more than happy to host more of these.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to that opportunity.
Awesome.
And everybody that stuck with us, I think we got four people that stuck with us the whole time. I appreciate your patience with the technical difficulties on my end. And I hope everybody has a good time in their crafting and their smithing.
All right, real quick. my name is Nathan Thomas on Facebook, or you can go to Golden Ram Forge on Instagram. I'm just kind of giving myself a quick plug. If anyone has any more questions or would like to kind of ramble on about blacksmithing or metalwork in general, please reach out to me. My name is on Facebook is again Nathan Thomas, but that's a little bit generic. There's apparently a lot of Nathan Thomases. You can go to Cherish Aaron. That's my wife. That's Duchess Cherrick, but she goes by Cherish Aaron, or I'm sorry, C. Aaron Thomas on Facebook, and from there you can find me in her friends list. Her name is a little more specific, so it might be easier to find. But if you can't quite find me there, find me at Golden Ram Forge on Instagram and reach out to me there.
Excellent. We have a few more classes I'm going to plug here. On April 18th, that's a Monday night, we're going to have a novice level project research class on how to do research for novice level arts and sciences. And Count Valbrandr will be joining us with his wife, Countess Cherish. On May 18th, we're going to do a virtual leadership and command class in melee and war. And we're looking forward to hearing that side of the SCA as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.